What's going on, everybody? So, it's fun to talk about cards. It's fun to pick other people's brains, watch cards, look at cards, research cards, watch videos about cards, make videos about cards, interact with people about cards. But the most fun, the best part of being a card collector are picking up new cards. It's adding to your collection. It's that card that you've been wanting and you get it. That's the best part. One of the things a lot of you have reached out to me and talked about is, hey, share more about your collection. Share some of the cards that you have. Share some of your recent pickups. So I said, okay. So what I try to do is every once in a while, maybe once a month or maybe a little more than that, every 5 or 6 weeks, I try to make a video and share some of my recent pickups. Now, I prefer to buy cards at shows because if I buy a card at a show, I don't have to pay sales tax, I don't have to pay shipping, and I don't have to compete against other buyers. So it's always fun going to a show, but it's also fun because I usually pick some stuff up. But that's not the only place that I pick cards up. There are a few different auction sites I've bought from before. There's social media stuff I've bought from before. But I'll be honest, a lot of my buys, a lot of my purchases, a lot of the additions to my collection, they come from eBay. They come from eBay purchases. I have a whole bunch of saved searches that I am constantly checking to see if there are new cards that might be good additions to my collection. And I've mentioned before that my budget isn't huge. I've mentioned before that, it's really like $100 or so a month that I set aside to add to my collection. But if I sell something, if I make money from cards, if I find some cards and I flip them to make a few extra dollars, or I take some things that used to be something I wanted in my collection and I move it on, I take that money and I set it aside to add to my budget. So some months my budget for new additions is kind of small, but I've sold a lot of stuff recently. I've made a few good sales. I've picked up some extra money. So the last month or two, I've been able to reap the benefits of that and pick up some new stuff. Well, I picked up some new stuff this month, and I'm excited to show you. Now, some of the stuff is PSA graded. Some of it is SGC graded. And there's one card that is ungraded. And I'm a mostly vintage collector. But you also know that I like to pick up some modern stuff from time to time. And I'm not just a baseball card collector. I collect football cards, as I've talked about recently. It's been a while since I've talked about my basketball cards that I collect. And in fact, as basketball season is starting to get closer, in the near future, I'm going to take some time and I'm going to go through some of my vintage basketball collection too. Because I honestly haven't done that in a while. But the focus of today, the focus of this video is to show you some of the pickups I was really excited to make this month. Well, last month in August. I had some big ones. I had 5 main pickups. And I spent some money. I spent a fair amount. I kind of busted my budget. Well, I reaped the benefit of some money that I've made from cards. Mostly vintage, but one that's going to surprise you. And I'll be honest, it's kind of a Grail card of mine. It's a card that I've wanted for over 35 years. I finally picked it up. I've literally wanted it for over 35 years, and I finally got one. And it's not the card you're thinking of. I guarantee you, whatever you think it is, it's not that. You might be surprised. Here are my pickups from the last month or so, and I'm super excited to add each of them to my collection. Let's check them out.
All right, so let's take a look at my pickups for the month. First up is my only ungraded card of the month. This is a 1951 Bowman Larry Doby. I think this card is sweet. Great color. No creases or wrinkles in it. I mean, the centering is great. The back is clean. I mean, when you look at that card, to me, it's a really, really nice looking card. Now, with all of these, I will also show you the amount that I paid for the card. Sometimes I pay a little over comps because I think it's worth it, quite frankly. This one, though, I don't know. I love the card. Jumped off at me. I'm trying to collect as many 51 Bowman Hall of Famers as I can. So this one ended up costing me $39, which I thought was a really good deal. I think if that card gets graded, I don't know, I think it's probably a 3. Next up, the 1971 Wilt Chamberlain in a 7. Now this card looks literally to me like it was just pulled from a pack. The corners are perfect. The centering's really nice, and this is a brutal year. Still got the eBay authentication seals on there. I'll just take those off. To me, those don't do much for me. But, I mean, the centering this year is brutal. There's a little bit of a coloring thing there that was obviously from the printer when it was manufactured. Other than that, I think the card, I mean, it's probably like, I don't know, 60-40 centering, 55-45, something like that. But razor sharp card. And I paid up for it, $275, but they routinely go for more like $325 to $350, so I thought that was a great deal. Next is a Bobby Wallace T206. Bobby Wallace is a Hall of Famer, and it's a sweet cap back. He's got over 2,300 hits. Went into the Hall of Fame in 1953. Now, when looking at the T206 cards, I kind of tend to prefer the portrait cards. So when I can get them, I can. Now this one got the above average PWCC sticker, meaning it's above average for its grade, according to them. And it's a 3.5. When we're talking about a card that's a T206 and it's a 3.5, that's a really high-end card. That one I paid $315, but again, a Hall of Famer and a 3.5. Pretty good deal. This one is an SGC holder. This is a Chief Bender. Now, Chief Bender was a really good pitcher, and he has over 200 wins. His ERA was under 2.5. He has over 1,700 strikeouts. He was the first Native American inducted into the Hall of Fame, and he went in the same year as Bobby Wallace in 1953 from the Veteran Committee. He has 3 World Series titles. Again, to me, this is a really, really strong 2. Really well centered. That top right corner is the biggest issue on the card. But other than that, again, no creases, great color, great centering, 3 great corners for a 2. It's just that one. But really, really happy to add this card to my collection. Another Hall of Famer of a T206 player. And this one went for $317. And here is the Grail card. I told you I had one. When you look at Garbage Pail Kids, first series is what it's all about. And there are really just a handful of the top tier cards in the first series. This one is the card. This is the iconic Garbage Pail Kid card. The Atom Bomb card. And I got it in a 7. Now, when you look at the back, there are two backs that it could have. It could have the checklist or the cheater's license. To me, I'm not really that worried about backs, just like I'm not with T206. That's not my thing. The focal point for me is the front. Again, really, really sharp card. When I turn it back over here, you'll see that really the only issue is the top to bottom centering. The corners are razor sharp. The side to side centering is awesome. And it's a really strong 7. I paid $135, but this card routinely goes for about $200. It's a great deal.
See? I told you I was going to surprise you. I don't always talk about the fact that I'm kind of a closet garbage pail kid collector. Here's the deal. For me, I don't just collect old cards. I collect some cards from the 80s, from the early 90s. What I really find are the cards that I tend to target and I tend to want to add to my collection are the cards that I wanted when I was a kid, but I couldn't buy them. I either couldn't afford them, or I couldn't come across them, or they were just unattainable. Yes, I went to a lot of shows as a kid, but there are a lot of cards that you couldn't just buy them as a kid. So yeah, I went through lots of cases of vintage cards as a kid, looking at show after show after show, and we went to a lot of shows. And there were a lot of cards that I wanted, and one of the things that I always loved were T206 cards. And I've always been a fan of the Hall of Fame. And when I went to the Hall of Fame with my dad and my brother and my wife quite a few years ago, I remember looking at all of the plaques on the wall. And even the names I didn't know, I had a sense of appreciation for. So to be able to buy some of those tobacco cards of that I loved the looks of, even as a little kid when I would go to these big shows along the West Coast. But to be picking up some of those cards of those Hall of Famers, with my name being Greg and the roots of my name and the spelling being from the captain, Greg Nettles, in the late 70s. My niece being named Mattingly because of my brother's admiration for Don Mattingly and the Yankees. I have a special place in my heart for Yankee captains. And I'm always looking out for Yankee captains. And that's something that I'll collect. So it's the old vintage cards. It's the tobacco cards. It's the Hall of Famers. It's the cards that as a kid I had admiration for, that I wanted, but I couldn't obtain. So when I pick each of these cards up, it's pretty cool. And garbage pail kids, if you were a kid growing up in the middle 80s, they were huge. And what is the biggest garbage pail kid? Without any doubt, it's the atom bomb card. I've wanted it for years. Now I've got it. This was a big month for me. It was an expensive month, but it was a big month. And I added some really cool cards to my PC, and I'm super excited. I love sharing it with you. Let me know which of the cards that I picked up is one that stood out to you, that you thought was the coolest. Let me know what you think.